Hey everybody, this is Mike with the One Stop Co-op Shop, and we're diving into solo and cooperative 4X games again. I'm now looking at Fractal, which is in its final days on Kickstarter, but they added a mod on Tabletop Simulator showing the Automa, which can be used for solo or cooperative play, and I wanted to give it a shot. As usual for these videos, I'll do a playthrough. Not sure if I'll do an entire full game or just a couple of cycles. And then at the end, I'll give my impressions on the game overall, so feel free to use the timestamps to skip to that whenever you like. And just a reminder, we never accept compensation for our Kickstarter coverage. We just want to help you make an informed decision. But with that out of the way, let's jump into the basics of playing Fractal. So in Fractal, as with many 4Xs, you each have your own faction. Here I'm playing the Exodians. And the Automa I'm facing off against is the Sora. Now, in the full Automa expansion, there will be an Automa for, I believe, each of the 7 factions in the game, but this is the only one that's featured in the mod. So this is the only one I've gotten to try out, and I can't really comment on other ones and how they might play. And if you don't know the term 4X, it comes from games like Civilization and Masters of Orion. It's a computer genre that I really enjoy, and I'm happy that we have more board games coming out in this space, especially for solo and co-op play. But the basic idea is you have your civilization, here's mine, here are the Sora up here, and we're going to be trying to exploit and expand our empire, exploring into these different places and trying to exterminate each other. There are the 4Xs, trying to get, in this case, the most victory points by the end. We're going to gain victory points by fulfilling these objectives at the end of the second and the fourth round, which are called cycles, each of the rounds. And a given cycle follows these phases. First, you have the income phase, where we get some credits. Then you have the action phase, which is really the meat of the game, where we take turns doing 2 actions at a time. Me, then them, then me, then them. We have the conflict phase, where we resolve any battles that have been set up during the action phase. So you don't fight right away. You wait until the conflict phase to actually resolve the battle. Then we resolve any remaining sieges, and we do it all over again. And at the end of the second cycle, we have something called transition, where we resolve mysteries and a few other things. We have some scoring, and we do scoring again at the end of the game, but with the potential for 2 victory points from each objective instead of 1. Now, I'm not going to go through all the actions and elements because a lot of that will come out in the playthrough, but just to point out a few things. Each of the factions has 4 tracks: Imperial, Productive, Scientific, and Military, and these tokens here are your colonies. And as you place these colonies on the correct sectors on the board, you're going to uncover better bonuses because you use the rightmost bonus of a given track. So for the military track, we'll be able to recruit more units. For the scientific track, we can move our units further and develop technology more quickly. For the productive track, we get more credits to take more actions every turn. And for the imperial track, we get more logistics to move our units with the advance action. And we can also eventually play more action cards. And it's also going to earn us influence, which can be used for our faction special abilities. Besides the basic actions, which you'll see as I play, there's also an offer of 4 action cards at a time, and each player can generally use 2 of these on a given cycle, and that's actually how you pass your turn in the cycles. Once you've used your second action card, then you cannot take any more turns, so the other players will keep on going until they also finish up. There's a lot more to show in the game, but it'll all come out as I play, so let's get right to it with me being the first player over here on my starting sector. So first we have the income phase. We're going to remove 1 depletion token, which we won't have yet, but basically some of our actions can become depleted to give us a discount on them. Then we would gain resources if we had exploitation areas. We don't. Then we'll gain credits. We do have that. And we'll have the option to use our government income action. So credits are based on your productive track. Currently, I'm getting 3 per cycle. So I move this little credit token up here to the 3 spot. And generally speaking, that means I'll be able to take 3 of the basic actions this coming cycle. And then the final step of the income phase is I can spend influence, which is sort of this column icon you see in the middle of this card here. I have the military state, which is one of the 2 cards I could have chosen for my faction, the Exodians. And it says for 2 influence, I can replace one of my tactics with its elite version. That makes me better in combat for the rest of the game. And I should have 2 influence because I started with 1, and then my starting colony is an imperial colony, so I get a second, I think. And I should say, by the way, that I'm playing with prototype rules, and some of them aren't entirely clear to me yet, especially the Automa rules. So I'm not 100% sure on some things, but I'm just trying my best. Like, I'm not really sure if I have 2 influence or 1 to start, but I'm going to say 2 would make sense with me having an imperial colony, because these little influence in between shows you whenever you place one of those colonies, you gain some bonus of influence. And you know what the hey, I will go ahead and spend 2 influence to upgrade one of my tactics. And to explain which one I'm going to pick, each faction has what are called mastery cards, and mine, Elite Training, says I reduce the initiative of the flanking tactic by 1, which basically means it'll attack faster in a combat where I use it. And each faction has their own set of tactics cards, which are used in combat. We'll see those when we get to the actual conflict phase. But here is my basic flanking card, and I'm going to go and upgrade that because you also have this elite deck of matching tactics. So I'm going to replace basic flanking with elite flanking, and that'll make me way better, especially with that initiative bonus from my faction. But that's not going to matter until we get to conflict, so let's leave that alone for now. Meanwhile, the Automa doesn't really care about the income phase, except that they prepare their protocol cards. And this is, by the way, the main way you adjust difficulty. You can have them have only 4 protocol cards in their deck, or to have normal difficulty, you can have them have 5 cards. I guess you can even go up to 6 cards if you are crazy. And the top card of the deck goes in the discard pile, because these red arrows here are going to help determine what actions the Automa takes. Think the Gaia Project Automa, if you've seen that. And the remaining 4 cards, since I'm playing on normal difficulty, will be used to control the Automa's actions throughout this cycle. But that's all they have to do in income, so we're ready to go to the action phase. And I am the first player, so I will have the first shot at things. So now I'll quickly go through the basic actions. Each of these 4 here will cost 1 credit, so generally speaking, I'll be able to do 3 of them, although it can deplete to take away that credit cost. But that means the action can't be used for the rest of the cycle. I get to freely clear 1 depletion token at the beginning of each cycle, so I can kind of safely deplete 1 action each cycle, but if I deplete more than that, I'll be locking myself out of actions in the future. But that was more info than you needed. The recruit action will get me more units on my colonies. The advance action will let me move my spaceships and bring ground troops along with them. The colonize action will let me colonize a place. Once I've gotten rid of the obstacle or other token on it, you'll see those as we advance and explore. And then finally, research will get me new technologies based on my scientific track. I've also got some options that don't cost credits. The action option grabs one of those action cards I showed you earlier, and again, once I've grabbed my second, that will be the end of the cycle for me. And the government option costs influence instead of credits, and again is based on the card you chose at the beginning of the game. With the military state, at the bottom it says, as an action, I can replace 1 infantry from the board with 1 mech from my reserve. Mechs are much more powerful ground-based units. And by the way, I do also have some powers unique to my faction. Here it says Children of the Rebellion. Anytime you replace or remove one of your colonies in a sector, you add 1 infantry to that sector. So especially if like the enemies come in and start attacking my places, I'll get some free defenders to try to take it back. And then Iron Discipline, anytime you replace one of your tactics with an elite version, gain 3 science. So I guess that should have happened actually. So whenever you gain science, you take an equal number of science points, and these have a 3 on the back. There we go. And there's a big offer of 5 civil technologies and 5 military technologies, and as far as I understand, these are the same every game, so you're going to have the same things available. The military technologies are pretty straightforward. They will boost some of your tactic cards, like this one I might want to get. Ethereum Explosives will improve my flanking tactic and make it stronger. I don't have Swarm Attack, but other factions might. Meanwhile, civil technologies will give you different cool powers, like Nanorobotic here will remove 1 depletion token from the Colonize action, so you can kind of freely deplete that without worrying about it. And one of the things that happens when we get through the second cycle is we put out the stronger versions of these technologies. We ascend, basically, to have more expensive but better technologies available. But I should probably check the objectives to see what I might want to get. So the Imperial objective will give me 1 victory point if I have at least 3 influence at the end of the second cycle. Productive wants me to have a productive colony. That's the first icon. And then the second one is, I think they're called like living planet tokens. They're these things you can find in the galaxy. Scientific wants me to have 3 military technologies. That's that gear icon. So I'm probably going to research one of those. Military wants me to have 2 of whatever that type of colony is. And exploration has 2 of different types of colonies. You'll see them on the map tiles, the sectors. Like here we go, here's the triangle symbol that we saw on that one objective. Wow, so I'd have to go here and colonize and be all the way over in the enemy's space. That's not going to happen in the first 2 cycles, I don't think. But back to technologies and science, the cost for technology is at the bottom. Now I could freely split these 3 science points among technologies, and it's not until I finish researching one that I get it. But let's go ahead and grab the Ethereum Explosives. It'll boost my flanking. I'm really going all in on flanking. And let's go ahead and claim the top card for myself. There is another copy underneath. And that'll be 1 out of 3 military techs I need to gain the victory points for the 1 objective, and I'm going to boost my attack later. But we haven't actually gotten to my actions, so what do I want to do? So I'm starting out over here with a light ship. This is the basic space base unit, and 2 infantry. And a light ship can transport either 2 infantry units or 1 mech unit. So I can bring these guys around, and I can colonize if I get to one of these places. Although first I'll have to resolve the obstacle or the anomaly that are near me. They might require me to destroy some units or bring certain units there or take certain actions. And only when that is cleared away can I actually colonize onto the space. And by the way, this little space down here is where colonies go, and the icons underneath show which type of colonies can be on a given sector. So over here is the only place that can have a productive colony, which is huge because that gives me more credits, which means more actions every cycle. Then to zoom in a bit, the other icons are here at the bottom. We've got influence on the left, military in the middle with the star, and on the right is the science icon. So I could, for my first action, advance with the idea that I would colonize soon, or I could recruit some more units to make my advance get more done for me. Or I could always take one of the 4 action cards. Let's see what those are before I make my other choices. So first we have Overexploitation. Immediately gain the effect of an exploitation area you control on a living galaxy. I think that's what they're called, which is that little like spinning icon. I don't have that yet, so that's totally useless. Naval Tradition. Add 1 light ship to one of your colonies. If it's a military colony, add 2 light ships instead. Wow, that is pretty nice. That's like a free recruit. Okay, Mercenary Wing. Replace Orbital Assault or Orbital Defense Tactics with its elite version. Ooh, previous player moves 1 living galaxy, but the Automa does not care about living galaxies, so they won't gain that bonus at all. But wow, that could get me another elite tactic, which don't forget, for my faction would also give me 3 research for free. That's amazing. And finally, Colony Prosperity. If I have at least 2 production colonies, that's not going to happen. I can remove 1 depletion token, and if I have at least 1 science colony, I could gain 3 science. Lots of ways to gain science here. But yeah, I'm going to go ahead and grab Mercenary Wing. It's so good for my faction, and the Automa will sometimes grab these out from under you, so I don't want them to get it first. And if I grab it, I immediately replace it, so there we go. With Twisted Fate, place 1 victory point on one of the objectives, which now rewards 1 extra point until the end of the game, and I would gain 1 influence. Well, that'd be nice if, for example, I get 3 military technologies and the Automa is not even close to it. I could guarantee an extra victory point for myself. Alright, so I put the action card over here, and let's see, do I want Orbital Assault or Orbital Defense upgraded? Well, Flanking is an offensive card, so let's go for Defense. I'm going to get rid of this basic Orbital Defense and get the elite version all right, and it's upgraded by Reflective Shields. Well, maybe I'll grab that. Because again, Iron Discipline, anytime I replace one of my tactics, I gain 3 science. Oh, but darn, never mind. I don't see that technology, so it must be one of the ones that comes out in the Ascension phase. Well then, I don't know, let's get Subkinetic Rifles. I improved my Ground Assault tactic. I don't think I have Frenzied Assault. And hey, that's 2 military techs. I'm only 1 away from getting that 1 objective locked down. Alright, so that was my first action. I can move that up. Remember, that's 1 of 2 action cards I can grab, and then I would have to end the cycle, so I don't want to grab another one for a while. And then, I think I will go ahead and recruit for 1 credit. So how recruiting works is I choose 1 unit type, and then I count the number of that unit I gain based on uncovered spaces on the military track. So here I can only pick infantry and get 2, the top icon, or light ships and get 1. But if I had more of these colonies gone like this one, you see it says +1 light ship on the bottom of that space. So I can get 2 light ships, or the top icon there is 1 mech. So as you place more military colonies, your recruit actions will get more units for you. But I'm going to pick 1 light ship here. And you can put them on any of your colonies, but I only have the 1. So there we go. That is my second action. So my turn is done. We're going to go to the Automa and see how they work. So to determine the Automa's turn, I take the top card of their protocol deck, and I put it beside the top discard. And the first thing I look for is the completed dark box. And sorry, I know it's hard to see here, but you'll see the A here has a dark spot over here. So you kind of have like this rectangle that's completed by the joining of the cards. And the A is short for aggressive, which means the Automa is going to use aggressive behaviors, which only matters for 2 of its actions. First, it matters for recruiting, which is the top icon with just a little bit of text, and it also matters for advancing, where they'll move their units, which is the most complicated part of what they'll do, but it's not too bad. We'll see how it goes. Now, the other thing the card combo determines is which actions they'll take. So you'll see there's 2 red arrows on this right card. Just to zoom in a bit, there you see them. And in this case, they're pointing to the first and third row, which is going to determine the actions. So the first row here has a red arrow in between with an arrow. That means the Automa will try to do the left icon action, which in this case is colonizing. And if they can't, they'll do the next action on the right. So the red line is an either or, and that means they will recruit. And then on the third row, you'll see they have a white line. That means they'll do both. So first, they'll try to use their faction special power. That is the icon on the left. And then they'll try to colonize again. So the AI clearly cannot colonize because generally speaking, each sector can only have 1 colony and they already have 1. And they need to have infantry on a place that does not have the tile or card on it. And they have to control that sector, have the most units there in order to actually colonize. So they can't do that. So for this first row, they're going to do the action on the right, which is recruiting. And recruiting is pretty straightforward. You look at the top arrow on the active card on the left, and you look up to the Automa's Cycle 1 card. And just to zoom in, here it is. We're looking at the column on the right, which has a light ship and 2 infantry. Now, if they were not capable of summoning every one of the units, they would go to the next column on the right, even wrapping around. In this case, the Automa have 2 military spaces uncovered, so they can recruit infantry, light ships, and mechs, which means the right column here, 1 light ship and 2 infantry is totally fine for them. And the aggressive behavior at the top says they would add units to the colony closest to enemy colonies because they want to get them attacking us. But in this case, that's a moot point because they only have one colony. That is a lot of units. So that's it for the first arrow. The second arrow points to the third row, which says, again, faction ability and then colonize. And I can't quite zoom in on this, but the basic Sora faction ability says train. They improve a tactic card from the Automa deck. We'll see that in a second. And then it says Tyranny and Knights, but it has 2 icons and 3. That is indicating if the Automa has 2 civil technologies, not the ones I've been getting, but the other ones, or 3, they will activate these abilities as well. And that's a general trend with the Automa. They don't ever resolve the things that are actually written on technology cards. They just grab them kind of randomly and then have ways they use them based on their faction. So in this case, all the Automa is doing is improving a tactic like I've done twice. Now, unlike me, they don't replace cards. Here they've got a random set of 5 basic tactics out of a total set of 10, and they're going to add 1 of their elite tactics right here to their basic deck, and then just shuffle it up. So now they've got an elite card in with the other 5 cards. And their final action on the third row is to colonize, because again, it's a white line, so they can do both. But despite their massive military, they haven't actually advanced to move their units yet, so they are not doing that. And that's it for their turn, so I'll take the old active card, put it on the top of the discard pile, so now we'll have arrows on the top and bottom rows, and we still have the rectangle being formed with the top row. And the Automa has 3 protocol cards left, so that's what will determine when they pass. Remember, we pass once we've used our second action cards. They pass when they have run out of protocol cards. All right, and back to us. We've got 2 credits left, so we can do at least 2 more actions. Then we can deplete 1 thing, so that'd be 3 more actions, plus a free action. So we can do at least 4 more actions, at least 2 more turns. And let's definitely start out by advancing. And for now, I'll go ahead and spend credits. I can decide what to deplete later. So when you advance, you look at 2 tracks. First, you look at the Imperial track, the top one, and the bottom icon underneath the card-shaped icon. In this case, I have 3 in the second space that I've uncovered. That's how many space units you can move. And then looking at the scientific track, also the bottom icon, the 1 is how many sectors I can move each of them. Now, I've only got 2 space units, so I can only move those 2, even though I could move 3 otherwise. And each of them can transport up to 2 infantry, but I only need 1 infantry to colonize. So what the hey, let's try splitting up. So I'll move this guy carrying 1 infantry. And the second you move into a space with a token or card, you reveal it. And here it says a vortex. So at the end of my turn, if I had 3 light ships here, I would gain 3 research at no cost. Or if I kill 1 light ship, that's what the X means, I'll gain 2 research. And the key thing is, if I do that, this will go away. And that means in the future, I can do a colonize action since I have an infantry here and I have the most units there to control it. And this is a mystery icon. Ooh, I forgot to get my mystery cards. Let's grab those real quick. So at the beginning of the game, I'm supposed to draw, I believe, 3 mysteries and pick 1 of them. And each of them will get resolved at the end of the second cycle. And based on whether you control 1 or 2 mystery icons, these sort of like flourish looking things you see here, I'll get either 1 or both benefits. So this one says Ethereum deposit. I get to place a productive colony in a sector containing your colonies, ignoring restrictions, so I can have a second colony in a sector. That's amazing. Because remember, productive colonies let you do more actions. I know if I had 2 mysteries, I would also gain 2 credits for the next turn. Warrior Codex, I get to place a military colony in a sector containing your colonies. Again, ignoring restrictions, that's pretty great. And you get to add 2 infantry and 2 light ships to a sector containing your colonies with 2 mysteries. Wow. And finally, Ruins of the Empire, add 3 ancient infantry. Those are just extra units for you to a sector containing your colonies. And then 2 mysteries gets me 3 influence. That seems the least interesting. Yeah, I definitely like this Ethereum deposit. It never hurts to have production. No, sir. So let's kind of hang on to that until the end of the second cycle. And the nice part about that is I already control 1 mystery sector. There's another one next to me, the Utopian sector. And by the way, this is always revealed. This is a sector where you can't colonize, but with the Automa, you always use the Resonant Monolith. There are other cards to play in competitive. And it says at the end of each cycle, if you control the sector, gain 1 victory point. At the end of the game, you gain 2 victory points for it. So it's just kind of a king of the hill sort of thing you and the Automa will often fight over. But anyway, at the end of this turn, I could kill my light ship to get 2 research and clear out this space for me to colonize. I think I'll probably do that. But let's go ahead and see what my other light ship and infantry find. This says Temporal Disruption. If I have a light ship here and spend 4 research, I can draw 2 artifacts and keep 1 of them. That's the icon on the right. So I'm getting 2 research here. If I can get 2 more and not spend it to get a technology, but instead spend it on this, that'd be cool. Or I could just say, forget that one, take my light ship and infantry, go up to the productive sector, and try to get a colony there to give me more actions in future turns. But it's not the end of the turn yet. That was only my first action to advance. So here I either have to deplete something or use my final credit or take another action card, but that would end my turn, so not going to do that. But I can't colonize yet because I haven't cleared away those things. Oh, so I know I can research, and that'll let me get rid of that second thing, because I'm going to get 2 science now, and then 2 more when I resolve that card in a second. That does use my last credit. Now I'm down to depletion to get extra actions. Okay, and here's 2 science points. And in this case, I'm not trying to build up to actually get a technology, so I'm just going to split them up, because I want to save them so I can spend them for that card in a second. And that is the end of my turn. I will go ahead and sadly destroy my light ship in the vortex, but it'll give me 2 science research, and that is gone. That is open to colonization now. So here we go. That's 4 technology. Actually, that's a good question. Can I just do this now? It says at the end of the action. What action? Like the advance action? I mean, that seems a little silly if I would need to advance again. So I'm just going to say it's good. Maybe I'm cheating, but whatever. And that one does not kill my light ship. I just give up these 4 research tokens. And it says that I draw 2 artifacts and keep 1. These are powerful effects. So I can get the Fragmented Prism. As an action, I can gain 1 credit and discard this artifact. And my other option is Warp Engine. It says permanent. When you move that's warships, which is the better type of fighter that can upgrade into. I ignore Pin Down. Wow, that's actually really cool. So usually when you're moving your space units around the map, other space units will prevent you from moving out. Basically like they equalize each other and neither of them can move. But that means my warship could just nope out of that kind of thing and like go deep into enemy lines where they don't have defenses. Well, yeah, as much as I love the idea of getting a credit for an extra action, I think I'd rather have the Warp Engine. Although actually, if I had 1 more credit, I could advance and then deplete the colonize action and get a productive sector colony before next cycle, which would give me an entire extra action next cycle. So maybe that's better than the Warp Engines. Yeah, I think I'm going to take the other one, the Prism. That's 2 actions for me. So the Automa's going again. This time the rectangle is on E, which is for expansive behavior. Basically, they're going to be trying to move out to find more colonies. And we're pointing to the top and bottom row. Top row says colonize, and if you can't colonize, advance. So they're finally going to move to some colonies. Then bottom row says use their faction action and then colonize. Darn, so they're going to get a colony pretty quickly here. All right, so the first action, they could not colonize, so they are going to advance. And they have 2 light ships to move. And their influence track is on the first space, which lets them move both of them. And so we go to expansive, and sorry that everything is so small in this TCS mod. I'm doing my best to read it. So it says, check before each movement, are there colonizable sectors without infantries in range? And yes, if there are space units able to transport infantries in range, then yes, they will move to those colonies. And it says priority colonies, which is based on the active card at the bottom. You'll see their priority units to decide ties between units. And for the colony icons on the bottom right, they have leftmost to rightmost. So they would first want a production colony, then science, then military, then influence this turn. But here it doesn't matter much because they can only move 1 space currently, and there are only 2 colonizable places next to them. This one can't have colonies. So I don't really need the tiebreaker. Each light ship is just going to move. And anytime light ships move, they bring the max of people they can carry, which remember is 2 infantry. So they are just stacking stuff up here. And they get to freely just delete these when they move in, the buttheads. They can colonize a lot faster than us in many cases, but they also don't get the bonuses we might get. So that was the top row. They couldn't colonize, so they advanced. Now the bottom row, they're going to do their civilization action and then colonize. So civilization action, remember, is to get an elite tactics. Now they have 2 elite tactics hiding in there. And then colonize, we do care about the priority order now. So it's production, which they can't get, then science, military, influence. So let's see, science is the second choice, so they're going to colonize right here, because the bottom right icon is a science colony. So they're going to go ahead and place their science colony, and now their units can move 2 each time they advance. Not sure I am liking that. Boom. And that was it for them. As you see, things go pretty quickly. They have 2 more protocol cards. All right, now it's my turn. Let's do my plan. So I'm first going to do Fragmented Prism. As an action, I will gain 1 credit and discard this. So, boop. Pretty steep cost, but it's okay. And then for my second action, I'm going to do the advance action, and then I'll do a depleted colonize action, taking away the 1 credit cost next turn. Now, I only have a single light ship to move, so I'm not going to do a lot of advancing, but I'm going to get to this productive sector. I can come back to the arid sector later pretty easily. That was it for me because the artifact was an action by itself. Now the AI. All right, so now they have the second rectangle, which is D, and that's for defensive. They'll try to shore up their defenses. And they're doing the top and second row, which is either colonize or advance, and then either colonize or recruit. And they definitely can colonize here, so we'll have to see if they prefer an influence, the fist, or a military, the star circle thing. And then for the second row, since they won't be able to colonize again, they will recruit. Let's see, military is the leftmost on their priority card this turn, so they are going to do a military one. And that will unlock the ability for them to build warships. Yikes. They are expanding pretty quickly. And then they're going to recruit, and we look, the arrow is the rightmost again, so they're going to do another light ship and 2 infantry, although they could have recruited anything else. Although actually looking at this card for cycle 1, they cannot possibly recruit warships, even though they have the tech for it. So the card changes after each cycle, and they'll get access to more people. Now, where are they putting their light ship and 2 infantry? Let's go to the defensive behavior card. And it says add units to the colony closest to enemy siege units. Siege units being any ground units, unless you have technology to make your warships have siege, I believe. And tie, you break by the most enemy siege units and then unit priority. So that's pretty straightforward. This colony is only 2 away from that one, so they're going to put everybody here. So yeah, their military is nothing to laugh at. Wow, they have a lot of guys. All right, and that leaves them with only a single protocol card left, so they will pass at the end of their next turn. But I'd kind of like to pass first, because then I become the Watcher. I flip this over, and that means while I'll have to give that token to another player at the end of the cycle, so the other player will become the first player, I get to have a free advance or recruit action at no credit cost, which is always good. So for my first action, I have no credits left, so I'm going to go ahead and deplete Colonize to not have to pay the credit cost. And these are depletion tokens, and I'm still not quite sure how I'm supposed to use them. Like, do they go vertically over it like that? I don't know. It's going to go away in a second anyway. And I'm going to colonize my productive sector. Yeah, that gives me 4 credits. And oh, I forgot. Oh my gosh. The symbol at the top here, it says infantry and then points to the credit symbol. So that's an exploitation ability. If I have an infantry here in the next income phase, which I do, I will get another credit. So wow, I'm going to have 2 more actions in the next cycle than I did last cycle. Awesome. Okay, for my second action, there's nothing I can do except take an action card. Which one do I want? Either Twisted Fate to get me an extra victory point later and gain an influence, or Naval Tradition, add 1 light ship to one of my colonies. Yeah, that seems pretty good because if I get a free recruit action, I can put 2 infantry down, and that way that guy can carry them around, so let's do that. And it gets replaced with the exact same thing. Okay. But yeah, here we go. I'll put it on my, I guess my starting colony, and I'll plan to recruit some infantry here in a second. And that's it. I've used my second action card, so I am passed for the rest of the cycle. I cannot act, and I am going to be the Watcher. But the Automa takes their final turn. And it looks like they're going to be aggressive again. And they're doing the 2 top actions. So they'll either colonize or advance. Looks like advancing, and then colonize or recruit. Oh man, are they going to attack me? Let's see. Aggressive. Check before each movement. Are there enemy colonies in range? If yes, move to closest priority colony. Oh man, can they reach my colonies? Remember, thanks to their signs, they can move 2 now. But no, they can't reach a colony. They can reach where my unit is, though. Oh, and the no says, are there enemy units in range? Yes, so they move to sector with the most priority units, which doesn't really matter, even though the priority on the right is light ship instead of on the left, because those are the only types they have to choose from. So yeah, this is pretty aggressive. They are coming over here with everybody. So I guess I'll get to show you how combat works. I didn't forget what happened. Then their second action, oh, they're actually going to colonize. What a bunch of jerks. Because remember, to colonize, you need infantry, and you need to have more units, what's called control, than the other player, and they clearly do. So let's see, their priority is technology, production, military influence, and they can only do technology or military, so it'll be another tech colony, which means they count as having a mystery. I'm not sure if that matters to the Automa, and they can still only move 2, so that didn't do a lot for them. That was a yucky thing. Okay, and that's the end of the action phase. But now we go into the conflict phase. We're going to fight in that 1 sector. And we put a little conflict token here, and if either of us wins, they'll get that as what's called, I think it's like a battle medal or something, and that is required for some objectives to get victory points. All right, so how does combat work? So happy you asked. I will draw all my tactic cards. Basically, these are my options, although 2 of them, Planetary Strike requires warships, and Heavy Fire requires mech, so I'm clearly not going to use those. But to look at the anatomy of a combat card, the value in the upper left is the initiative value. Lower is better. It means you go earlier. Generally, defense cards have 1, regular attacks have 3, and then some cards have 2 and some cards have 4. And then the icons and the text on the top half are what I'm going to basically try to deal or defend. If it has a shield, it's defense. So here I'm trying to defend against 1 skull and 2 flags. Skulls force me to deal damage to any unit I want, and flags force units to retreat. There's also bullseyes, which let me choose who gets killed. And finally, there are the hazmat symbols or nuclear symbol, whatever that is, which is massive damage, which straight up kills any unit right away. And then at the bottom of cards, you have the tech upgrade, which only applies if you have the correct tech, which means for flanking, I would get to do more damage. I think I'm just going to do flanking, right? So I could do orbital defense. So that would block any number of bullseyes. It would block 1 skull and 1 retreat. And it says, for each damage blocked by this card, inflict 1 retreat icon. This is generally how defense works. It forces the other player to retreat their units out. That's usually one of the only ways you can survive when you are outnumbered by an enemy. So that's actually my big choice here. Do I play orbital defense, hope they do an attack first, and then play my flank and maybe like finish them off if some of them retreated? Or do I play flanking first, and it has an infantry icon on there to either make them retreat or do skulls, so I can pretty much make sure that I do some damage to them before they get rid of my guy. Maybe that would work? It's kind of a tough call. I'm going to try the long shot to maybe win and do the defense and then the flanking. So I play my card, and the AI is really simple. They just play the top card. And their cards have 3 possibilities, and you resolve the first one that applies. White units on the left are their units, and red units are mine. So first they would check if they had 2 infantry or 1 mech. They absolutely do. Then if that didn't apply, they would check if I had 3 light ships. And then if that didn't apply, they would resolve the bottom effect, which says they would throw away a light ship or an infantry to deal some massive damage to me. So here they're going to use the top one, which is dealing 2 skulls. Those are me choosing who dies, and 2 flags retreats. And the icons on the right are if they have military upgrades. So if they had any military tech, 1 military tech would add a skull and a flag to the top row, whereas like 2 military tech cards at the bottom would add a bullseye and a flag. So sadly, I called the wrong defense. I will block 1 skull and 1 flag, which will make them retreat 2 guys, but I don't have the tech upgrade to do more with it. And they're still going to have 1 skull and 1 flag going through to kill my guy. Now, I'm not 100% sure on how the Automa retreats. I would assume it's with a priority unit, so I guess they'll retreat infantry first in this case. So they'll send 2 of those guys, I guess, back to the Resilient Monolith so that they will get some more victory points. But then they'll kill my guy, and they get the conflict token. Now, just to look, even if I had played ground defense, there still would have been 1 skull around, so it wouldn't have been that much better. Now, if I had played flanking, I could have forced them to kill 3 of their guys, 3 skulls. But either way, I didn't play it, so there it goes, sadness. And all the tactics go back to the supply. You have them available for the next fight. All right, now we go to the end of the cycle. Not much to do at the end of the first cycle, but since I'm the Watcher, I get a free recruit or advance. And not much question here. I'm going to recruit 2 infantry. But yeah, that is a pretty rough start. They really advanced hard. And they're also getting 1 victory point from controlling the Resonant Monolith. But looking forward to a potentially brighter future, this would go away. I would gain 4 credits, plus another one from my production colony with that ability on it. So I would have 5 basic actions, plus 2 action cards to resolve. And maybe that would be enough to kick them out. But we're going to stop the playthrough there and get to my impressions because, man, it is late and it is a long week, and I'm trying to get this one in before the Kickstarter ends. But things are a little busy, so I hope that 1 cycle was enough for you to at least get a feel for how the Automa works. I think it's pretty straightforward, but let's get to my thoughts on the game and how I feel about Fractal. So this is, I think, pretty interesting because I have now played 3 solo and cooperative 4X games, including Uprising from last year that I think is delivering pretty soon, Voidfall, of course, that I covered pretty recently, and then Fractal. Crazy that we have 2 sci-fi games with solo and co-op that are in the 4X genre so close together. So let me discuss Fractal a bit on its own merits, and then I can compare them to those. So first thing I want to say is that the game plays very quickly, especially at low player counts. I mean, you saw I got through 1 whole cycle in probably like half an hour once this is edited, maybe less. And I think once you know the game, you can probably get through a full solo game in like about an hour or so. I also like that the game does a good job of hitting all the 4X buttons. You've got a bit of exploration from these cards, and I didn't show you any of these. Like here's an ancient gate that would count as a mystery. And here's a wormhole that as long as you have a light ship, every cycle would give you 2 free research. So these are kind of cool. It's nice to have the different variety of sectors and colonizable places and like different cards popping up. So I think all that is nice. And then clearly you got a lot of combat, clearly you got a lot of building out your empire and expanding. So I think, yes, it is definitely doing all the 4X things, whereas some games like leave out one of the X's, which is fine, just what they might want to do. I also really enjoy the core action mechanic. I like that it's really quick turns, that you only do 2 things, and the Automa also only does 2 things. So it's pretty quick. I think even playing like 2v2 co-op against Automa should still be a pretty fast experience with little downtime. And while the basic actions are interesting enough on their own, I really like this action offer because they give you lots of cool other options to play around with, but the fact that taking too many of them will then end your cycle really gives you this kind of push and pull of when you might want to use them, and you might want to grab them before somebody else does. Clearly, that's going to matter more in competitive, where your opponent will intelligently grab things, but the fact that the Automa can grab them as well can still work out pretty well. And even though it's pretty basic, I like the idea that the game kind of lets you level up, you get new tactics cards, you unlock new upgrades by placing down your colonies, although at the same time, those things get taken away if your colonies get taken over. And the other main way of upgrading in most 4Xs is technology, and this is one area where I'll say I'm just kind of okay. The fact that, again, I think that you always use the exact same 10 basic technologies and the exact same 10 Ascension technologies, I think might limit the variety of gameplay a little bit. I would love if they had like 20 and randomize which ones you use each time. Although I understand that for the military ones, they go with certain tactics, so I guess that wouldn't really work. But that also, I think, makes the military technologies not that interesting. I like things that really change like how I do stuff, but most of these just make one of your tactics hit a little bit harder, which is, I don't know, not that exciting to me. The civic non-military technologies are certainly better for that, but again, I just don't think it's that exciting to have the same ones. I'm also not 100% sure on the objectives that earn you victory points because they are very kind of either or and confrontational, which of course is key to 4Xs, but this is a very, it seems to me, violent 4X. Because for example, to get 2 triangle colonies or control those places, I would have to go all the way across the board, at least in its current configuration, and be all up in the Automa's area. And I think that's going to happen for a lot of these that are based on controlling certain colonies. So this seems like, at least in this map configuration, at least with these objectives, a very aggressive game. Now, it's not necessarily going to be a knock for most people, but I often like my 4Xs to have a little bit more of like building up my stuff. And it seems like the objectives are really encouraging you to kill, 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 which is, fine, but it's going to lead to maybe some swingy games where you either get like all the stuff or none of the stuff and get a ton of victory points or very little. Now, something I do like a whole lot is how the Automa works. Man, this is a pretty straightforward and clean system. It took me a little while to understand the rules because the rulebook is not the greatest yet, but the sort of Gaia project-inspired way they use like the different behaviors and pointing to different actions and some actions kind of prioritizing other things, I think all that works really well. Now, the priority things at the bottom can get a little bit confusing. I'm still not 100% sure like if I retreated the right guys or killed the right guys, like when the priority applies and when it doesn't. So hopefully they keep on cleaning up the rules. But I think the way the Automa runs is super smooth, super quick. I mean, you saw how fast their turns were, and I think that is great. And let's see, what else is there to talk about? I guess combat. And this one is kind of mixed for me. So I think it's cool the way you have these asymmetric cards, and you can kind of try to bluff each other or guess like which way somebody might go. But because the Automa kind of counts down until they find something anyway, I find they don't really play like a player. Like, for example, they can have access to way more defenses than a player would ever have, so it doesn't really work the same. Although I did talk to the designer, and he says they're going to weaken the Automa defenses, I believe, a little bit, which I think would be a good thing, because right now, if they get too many defenses, the combats can kind of become pretty silly. But the other thing is, and this is kind of just a personal preference, this reminds me of the combat system in something like the old Game of Thrones games, where you would each pick like a combat card and things could go massively wrong, or Dune or Scythe, where you dial things in. And I don't tend to really like those kind of combat games. Call me crazy, but I like either deterministic combat or dice-based combat, where while yes, you can have crazy swings of luck, generally things will go the way you expect it. Whereas in this one, I think they wanted to maintain the possibility of like a single unit picking just the right cards and killing everybody, which is okay, but I sort of like, for my personal preferences, more predictability in how the combat goes, which, I said I'm going to compare later, but briefly to mention, I like the combat in Uprising and Voidfall a bit more than this one, although again, I think it looks pretty cool, and probably in competitive I would like it better. I'm just not sure I love the way the solo co-op bot combat works right now. And the final thing to mention, pretty important to 4Xs, is faction variety, and I think this is pretty good. I've only played with 3 of the factions. I've only seen 1 of the Automa factions, but they each have these different abilities, they have different special things they can do, they have different mixes of tactics cards. And although I've only seen the Sora Automa, the idea that you would have 6 more of these that would really do different things and level up in different things, and have different abilities from action cards and from civic text, which you didn't even see, but they get to do a lot of other cool things. I think that could be really, really neat, and I'd like to see that in action, but I didn't get the chance yet. So don't expect Spirit Island. This is not going to be crazy variety in the factions, and that's not really what they're going for. That's not usually what you have in 4Xs, but it's pretty good. I mean, every single faction is going to use the exact same units, and combat is pretty simple anyway, but the different tactics cards, again, should make things work differently. So I think the faction variety is okay. And just to finish up, let's do the comparison. How does this compare to Uprising and Voidfall? And full disclosure, I have only played a little bit of each of those, and none of them I have played the final production version, because again, Uprising is in production right now, or on the ships, I think, and clearly Voidfall and Fractal are like just finishing up their Kickstarters. But I would say map-wise, I probably like Fractal and Uprising the best. Voidfall, it's just very punishing to like expand out your sectors, and the Voidborn can attack you from almost anywhere for a lot of the game, so I feel a little bit less of like a firm hold of my territory. For combat, I would definitely give Uprising the edge. It's got dice, and I like dice-based combat, and each faction actually has unique units, so the combat feels more unique. And then I think Fractal would be at the bottom, like I already said. Voidfall, with its very deterministic combat, would be in the middle. For faction variety, I might put Voidfall on the bottom, although one of the designers, Nigel, was on our stream the other night, and he said that the advanced factions, which I have not gotten to see or play with, have much greater variety. So maybe Voidfall will be better, but right now I would put it at the bottom. I would put Fractal in the middle, and Uprising with the different units, with the different cards they have to like upgrade their heroes, I would definitely give the best nod for variety and characters. Technology upgrading and building out your empire, I would say Voidfall is the best. It has varied technologies in every single scenario, and they have major, major effects. I just found the ones in Fractal kind of ho-hum, and I don't really remember Uprising doesn't really have technology. It has like upgrade cards for your civilization, and those are pretty cool, although they got a little bit samey for some of the civilizations. So yeah, I'd say Fractal and Uprising are probably close to the same, and Voidfall definitely wins there. And just to compare one more thing, Automa. Well, Voidfall and Uprising kind of do something entirely different than Fractal, in that it's really like a different mode. Well, Uprising, I should say, is only solo co-op. There is no competitive, and you're trying to fight against two different empires who sometimes go against each other, which is super cool, very unique. And then Voidfall is kind of its own thing when you play solo co-op, because you're just trying to fight and overtake the Voidborn areas. I will say that Voidfall feels the most like victory point chasing, whereas even though Uprising has victory points and so does this one, it feels a bit more like organically like you're doing combat and stuff, whereas Voidfall is all about more of the Eurocentric kind of combo building for victory points. Nothing wrong with that, I'm just trying to sort of differentiate the three. But yeah, Fractal does get a bonus in that it's the only one that's trying to just play the game the regular way. So if you're somebody who likes to switch between competitive play and cooperative and solo play, this one is going to be, I think, the smoothest for you because you're not doing anything different. You're just running the Automa, but playing the exact same game, which also gives it the great flexibility of you can have like 2 versus 1 Automa or 2 versus 3 Automa and do like different cooperative team-based scenarios, or like 1 player versus 2 weaker Automa. You can do lots of cool things like that Uprising, which has only solo co-op, and Voidfall, which has solo co-op as a different mode, won't really allow you to do. And a final thing I should mention is that Fractal has like a legacy campaign sort of thing, but I got no chance to play any of that, so I have no idea if it's going to be cool or not, but it's certainly something different from the other two that makes it seem very unique. So there you go, I hope that one cycle playthrough was fun. I hope my thoughts were helpful. I'm not really sure which one I prefer the most at this point. I think they're all pretty cool, and hopefully your taste will lean one way or the other so you can make a clear choice. But for now, I'll leave you to decide on your own, and we'll see you at the next stop.